So welcome. I'm Jared Morningstar. I work for the Center for Process Studies. I've been scrambling to put this conference together, so I made these slides just imminently before this talk. But hopefully, nonetheless, there's something a little interesting or insightful or at least unique in what I'm about to present here. So titled this talk, Climate Anxiety, Nature Relatedness, and Peak Experience, an Anthropocosmic Perspective on the Constructive Role of Humanity in the Biosphere. So I'm hoping to draw together some interesting kind of empirical research, and certainly going to tie in with some of the other talks here today, but then do a little bit of process philosophy, spirituality type stuff as well. So yeah, so climate anxiety, maybe you've heard of this term, this new kind of psychological situation being studied nowadays. Don't have any stats here to share with you, but needless to say, there's this kind of rising phenomenon of psychological existential anxiety over the state of our climate in the biosphere due to anthropogenic climate change. So these are kind of mass feelings of displacement, not feeling at home in the Earth here on kind of the whole planet scale. It's not something any longer located in a particular region, a particular environment. And we kind of don't have this experience of like connection or even coherence between ourselves and the natural world. It's something no longer legible, kind of monstrous. So of course we're having these feelings of anxiety coming up in relation to this, and especially all the more with climate catastrophes that are proliferating, and you see them on the news, and sometimes you experience them directly, whether it be flooding or severe weather events, or maybe smoke from a country a couple 100 kilometers or miles away blowing into your own region. And so these can be major disrupting events, and knowing that this is going to be only increasing in intensity for sure brings up senses of anxiety. So there's a real disconnect between humanity and the rest of the biosphere in how we're experiencing the climate. So nature relatedness, this is a term that may be less well known, but this is kind of a metric that has been used by different sorts of scientists to explore the sense of connection between ourselves and the natural world. And so something you can kind of measure with a questionnaire and some empirical research. And some of the findings of these studies is that nature relatedness is something that is kind of modulatable, and it can increase with direct contact with the natural environment, sort of intentional reflection upon the natural world, and interestingly, and this is where I'm going to focus a little more here, altered states of consciousness as well. So this goes to show that we don't have just kind of a set, static, essential relationship with what we call nature or the environment, and it's something that we can modulate through particular kinds of experiences. So the anxiety response need not be the only response that we're kind of stuck with in terms of what we feel in terms of the natural world. So we have this researcher, Sam Gandy, who's done some interesting studies on psychedelic experiences and nature relatedness. And one of the major findings is that, these kinds of intense hallucinatory and visionary states that psychedelics reliably produce tend to increase nature relatedness. In addition, this increase in nature relatedness following psychedelic experiences was correlated with an increase in psychological well-being. From some of this, we can ask the question, what kinds of states of consciousness can promote nature relatedness? What states inhibit it? I think these are important questions to be asking in terms of moving towards a kind of more ecological, attuned civilization. We can try to leverage certain kinds of states, certain kinds of experiences to increase this sense of nature connectedness. So thinking about states a bit more, states of consciousness, we're currently in this Anthropocapitalocene situation, and oftentimes consciousness is alienated. We are not sort of connected with the fruits of our labor, other people, basic, the natural world itself as well. Individualistic, we're kind of confined to solipsistic mode of our own self-concerned consciousness. It's uniform, and this certainly ties in with the economic structures as well, with always being oriented towards efficiency and being this kind of malleable automaton of a human being that just produces for the economy rather than something with a kind of dynamic conscious interiority. Fungible, one person's consciousness could easily be substituted out for another's. We don't really tend to think in terms of the intrinsic value of consciousness, and we think very quantitatively in this Anthropocapitalocene in terms of economic value, in terms of productivity. There's other options for consciousness, and I think animism is an interesting header for some of the alternatives here. So consciousness that is connected both to the natural world, other agents, other beings, distributed amongst them, no longer locked into isolated minds, dynamic, having varied states of experience, rather than being always oriented towards a certain mode. And non-fungible, there is an intrinsic value to our experience that can't be just swapped for someone else's experience. And here we have a qualitative orientation rather than a quantitative one, where value and experience have these essential kind of aspects of being valued by an agent who cares, who is related to the broader ecosystem, the broader world. So I think it's both true that systems create certain forms of consciousness. Being stuck in the capitalist system tends to create this kind of alienation. And it is also true, though, that you can have certain forms of consciousness that produce certain kinds of systems. So if you're in a very quantitative sort of orientation, you tend to be kind of oriented towards something like economic production and maximizing of profits, because that's all that kind of perspective is able to really see. So I think it's important not to get too bogged down in foundationalist debates that can get in the way of productive engagement, and instead try to find projects and endeavors that tackle both systems and consciousness at once, and take those both as important projects. We're going to need to carve out space outside of capitalist modes to be able to have any kind of success, but likewise, it's also important to cultivate certain states of consciousness, and those can be mutually supporting rather than antagonistic sorts of projects. So shifting gear here to a little bit more of a philosophical sort of orientation. I'm going to say some provocative things about this idea of anthropocentrism, which is often taken as sort of the basic enemy of ecological consciousness. And is it possible to get rid of anthropocentrism? A lot of our environmentalism to this point has really been focused on trying to move away from a human-centered perspective and try to think more ecologically. And is it possible instead to rehabilitate this concept if we can't get disentangled from it? So what I'm going to argue here is that any organism takes its own perspective as central as it engages its environment. A squirrel is certainly squirrel-centric as it is relating to the broader ecosystem it finds itself in. And for the squirrel, that's not problematic. That is it sort of existing as the organism in its niche that is able to have this flourishing relationship, in the most part, with the broader context. And so what is it about human beings that makes us the exception to this rule, where we can't have this human-centered perspective on our relationship with the environment? Is that not itself a subtle and unconscious form of anthropocentrism that takes us as radically different from other organisms? So maybe there's a healthy form of eco-anthropocentrism. So if other organisms' perspectives are adaptive for their ecological niches, what would an eco-anthropocentrism look like? So I think rather than trying to strip ourselves of our perspectival embeddedness as human beings, I think we should instead rethink what human being is and do this specifically in a non-modern mode where our humanity is defined relationally rather than kind of essentially. And this can give us sort of ways of thinking of ourselves as uh, interpenetrated by the broader ecological context that we find ourselves in as organisms in the biosphere. So here's where I'm going to bring in this nerdy term, anthropocosmic, which process thinkers have used, but so have certain Islamic thinkers and Chinese thinkers as well. And so it's starting to take hold a little bit. And I think this will be a really helpful rubric for starting to think a bit differently about what humanity can mean in a more ecologically healthy, positive sort of way. And so rather than thinking of the human being as this exceptional creature that is so different from other organisms, other kinds of entities, and somehow outside of or separate from the natural order, human beings, like everything else, exemplify the character of the cosmos. So what this term is really pointing at, anthropocosmic, something about our very mode of being is exemplifying certain characteristics of the broader universe. And you could say that on a somewhat more micro scale as well, that human beings also exemplify aspects of the ecological environment. So this is sort of a bit of a fractal kind of structure here. So one of the things that make humans unique, though, is the breadth of the qualities which they can exemplify. So other organisms typically have a pretty established character to them. They have a set niche within their ecosystem that they're well adapted to, and that is part and parcel of their relational identity. The human being, however, is very mutable. We can find a variety of adaptive modes of existence in a variety of different environments. So we're kind of unique in this way. We don't need to be locally adapted in the same way that a lot of other organisms typically are. The whale shark is incredibly adaptive in the ocean environments that it evolved in, but put it in the desert and it won't last very long at all. Human beings, on the other hand, are able to flourish and exist in really an incredibly wide variety of different climatic and ecological contexts. And this is part of our kind of aspect of having this adaptability through our self-reflective, sort of conscious orientation. Though, of course, any form of adaptation will always have a local character, and you can look at indigenous societies in different parts of the world to see what a more local form of human adaptability looks like in, say, an Arctic climate versus an arid climate or tropical climate. But nonetheless, the fact that these are all human modes of adaptation sort of exemplifies this translocal mode of adaptability we have. This means that our proper niche is the biosphere as a whole, in a certain sense, rather than any given ecosystem. And that's, again, a very unique aspect to the human condition that isn't really the case with other organisms in the same sense. You can find certain kinds of organisms that might have wide range of sort of flourishing existences. I think about different kinds of bacteria, different kinds of mushrooms that exist all over the planet, but they still are kind of operating in the same mode where humans are genuinely adapted to very distinct conditions and able to make that kind of distinct adaptation. So what does this mean? What does this lead to for us? So with the particular niche for humanity established, the biosphere as a whole, we can begin to start thinking about an actual positive role for humanity in kind of the broader ecological context. So our malleability allows us to attune to these myriad ecological conditions and be in relation with a wide number of different kind of ecological actors and beings and find kind of harmonious relations with them. And being complexly attuned in this way allows us to actually mediate across ecological borders. So we don't need to be just stuck in kind of a particular local context and refine our knowledge just in this particular local environment, but can actually move across different ecological spaces and find healthy, productive modes of translating knowledge gained in one ecological context into a different kind of knowledge attuned to a different ecological context. And this ability to kind of have this fluid relational mode really allows for rich, productive ecological engagement if we are kind of healthily attuned to different ecosystems in somewhat more animistic, indigenous sorts of ways. But this allows us to, really maximize some of the positive relationality within kind of a broader ecological picture where we're able to bring material from one ecosystem into another in ways that enrich the ecosystem that we're bringing it into. So rather than just being a vector for mass ecological destruction, humanity has the opportunity to not only relate in a healthy way with the biosphere, but even contribute something of unique positive value, which no other organism could achieve, increasing the healthy relationality of the biosphere as a whole. So there's still like quite a bit to flesh out here, exactly what that can look like, and connecting more so how some of these earlier material I was bringing in terms of different states of consciousness and systems thinking can be really leveraged to like orient towards this mode of healthy relationality in the biosphere. But having this type of anthropocosmic perspective where it's like, not only can we sort of be in harmony here, but there's actually a role that humanity has to play, or could play ideally, to do something of real positive value that is only possible for human beings. Gives an attractor for ecological action that I think is really helpful. So much of our orientation towards ecological civilization is avoiding disaster. And while that's crucially important, I do think we also need some kind of positive vision grounded in a new kind of anthropocosmic perspective on humanity itself. So this is my first attempt here. There's some interesting work by one of my colleagues, Layman Pascal, drawing on G.I. Gurdjieff, the odd Armenian spiritual teacher who is able to think ecologically in some of these same ways as well, giving a kind of spiritual connection to this idea of a productive role for humanity in the biosphere, and doing some work with Gunnar Gabriel in Norway as well, trying to think about some of the ways that religious pluralism and the kind of tensions and conflicts that exist there could actually be resolved in a way that is likewise kind of integrating with some of this anthropocosmic orientation towards a more ecological vision for humanity. So, all right, thank you.